Welcome. This is the first video of the RPHN network. Today I want to share with you my comments on a document that has been circulating around the internet for some time now. I first learned about it in 1994, and when I did learn about it, I was in a state of shock. I was in disbelief, and I would say I was in denial. I wanted to believe that the document was a hoax. But in time, and after reading it a few times, I've come to believe that it is a genuine document and that its release was intentional and not an accident. I want to very quickly share with you my thoughts on it. You can download this document from the link provided in the comments. There are actually two different versions of the document. There's this one that you're looking at here on your screen, which is supposed to be the original scan that was found in a photocopier that was purchased at an auction. There's another version that's a retype of it, which I obtained from a website called stopthecrime.net. And that second version is, I believe, much easier to read and comprehend. There's a third version of this original scan that you're looking at that contains my annotations. And in that same Dropbox folder where you'll find these three documents, there's a fourth document, an index to my comments. So, that said, let's proceed quickly. The first thing I want to point out is the date of this document. It is May of 1979. And in the prologue, it states that this publication marks the 25th anniversary of the Third World War, called the Quiet War. Now, I've titled this video How We Can Win, and what we want to win is this quiet war. So May of 1954 is the date that the war was initiated. Now, every war has to have a declaration of war, and we found the declaration here on page 3. I do believe that before this document was released onto the internet, that the declaration of war was defective because it wasn't clear and unequivocal and communicated to all of the parties upon whom war was being made. I talk about this in my comments, so have a look when you download the files. Now, moving on page 6, we see a reference to a book written by a man called Vasily Leontief, and the book is titled Studies in the Structure of the American Economy. This statement suggests that the creatures conducting this war used the Leontief matrix as a means of predicting outcomes and directing their efforts. Now, here on page 7, these two statements to me are convincing evidence that the author is a true psychopath and not some man who's perpetrating a hoax. The first thing he says here is, all science is merely a means to an end. The means is knowledge. The end is control. This statement provides evidence that the author of this document is a genuine psychopath and not a man merely perpetrating a hoax. Men created in the image of the living God are not naturally concerned with controlling others unless those others pose a threat to their families and societies. The natural inclination of mankind is to create circumstances that yield the greatest benefit to the greatest number of members of their societies. And then immediately after that, we see more evidence that this author is a true psychopath. He refers to moral issues as being so-called, thus suggesting that he is devoid of the innate morality that a man created in the image of the living God possesses. Moving on page 9, here's some discussion about the silent weapon, and when you read this, if you've not read this before, you'll recognize that this is what's being done to you. When a silent weapon is applied gradually to the public adapts to its presence, and learns to tolerate its encroachment on their lives until the pressure, psychological via economic, becomes too great and they crack up. What this is saying is they use economic scarcity, artificially created economic scarcity, to create conditions of psychological distress, and the result of that is addiction. I maintain that both drug addiction and work addiction are principally caused by this silent weapon or silent weapons. Both behaviors are detrimental. However, drug addicts are shamed while workaholics are tolerated and at times glorified. But they're both addictive behaviors, and they're the two principal ways that the subjects of this weapon, the victims of this weapon, adapt to it. Now on page 13, more evidence of psychopathy. The author here is talking about the balancing of the credit, and he does admit in here that the American public, they're the creditors. And he's saying that the only way out of this negative credit situation is balancing the population, that is reducing it, either through war or genocide. This is why the Georgia Guidestones call for a reduction in the number of living souls on God's earth to no more than 500 million. That is, they're claiming that 12 out of 13 people have to die in order for them to balance the books. That could also explain the extraordinary events of this year, 2020. Now here on the top of page 16, we have another reference to the Leontief matrix, more evidence that that's one of their primary tools. And immediately after that, we see that the Harvard Economic Research Project was an extension of World War II operations research. Its purpose was to discover the science of controlling an economy. At first, the American economy, then the world economy. So the battleground of the war right now is here, principally in America, the United States of America. This is the test economy for their plan. And I'm personally happy that they chose us rather than some other nation. I'm happy for the opportunity. Now here on page 22, we find what I'm saying is a false premise. The author says the problem with stabilizing the economic system is that there is too much demand on account of too much greed and too much population. I agree with too much greed. However, I believe the other factor is underutilization of mankind's inherent energy, which is caused by the slavery system that has been imposed on it. Deconstructing the slave system will free mankind's creativity to achieve greater utilization of the Earth's resources. Here on page 23, we've got another false argument. The author is claiming that he presents a false premise, I should say, rather, to support the adoption of the lesser of two evils. And these two evils are either allowing mankind to bludgeon themselves to death or enslaving mankind. And I say neither of that's necessary. I would say that the scarcity of resources is actually an intended attribute of the economic slavery system that's been imposed upon mankind. Now on to the good news. How we can win. The author admits on page 6 that the very elements of the new silent weapon technology were as accessible for a public utopia as they were for providing a private utopia. Make no mistake, he is advocating a private utopia to members of his clan. That's the purpose of this document, to indoctrinate members of his clan into this system to recruit them for the war. But he's admitting that the same things that they are using to carry out their war are accessible to us to create a worldwide utopia. And that's how we can win. We need to take their weapons and use them for good. So that concludes my comments on this document. Thank you for sharing your time with me today. Please check in soon to look for additional videos in which I will be sharing my ideas on ways that we can win this war. Thank you.